Welcome, everyone. Hope you're enjoying your Dreamforce so far. Really appreciate everyone taking their time out of their lunchtime to come hang out with us today. Hopefully you grabbed some boxed lunches. They look delicious. If you're wondering what we're going to be talking about today, we're going to be talking about the Lightning design system. It's our very own design system that we've built in-house. And it allows you, the consumer, to also build the beautiful user interfaces the same way that we have built our Lightning experience. We're going to be covering a range of topics, but we're going to kind of start off with how we got here, what the design system is, and what it isn't. First, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Brandon Farua. I come to you from the user experience team, where I'm working as a principal UX engineer on the design system.
And my name is Jade Pennig. I'm also a principal UX engineer on the Salesforce Lightning design system under the user experience organization. So let me get a show of hands. How many of you have heard of the Lightning design system before?
Hopefully everyone.
Awesome.
Yes.
How many of you regularly use the Lightning design system? Okay, cool.
Right,
well, there's a lot of opportunity for expanded knowledge here.
And also I just want to get a show of hands. How many admins, developers, designers? None of the above? Okay. Cool. Awesome. Well, first, let's take a look at this beauty. This is our forward-looking statement. I'm sure you've seen this 1,000 times already. Salesforce is a publicly traded company, so please make any of your purchase decisions based on what we have commercially available today. But before we begin, I want to point everyone in the direction of our recently released lightningdesignsystem.com. This is our Winter 19 version of Lightning Design System. So if you feel free to open up your laptop and follow along during this presentation today. We'll be talking about a lot in this website. First, though, I want to start off a little trip down memory lane. Back in 2014, with the launch of our Salesforce One mobile app, we also took our very first step forward with providing a living style guide. It was a very simple site at best, but it demonstrated, how screens should be laid out, how things should look and feel within the Salesforce One experience. It was technically built with living code, but it was simply for display purposes. And then later at Dreamforce that year, we talked to a lot of our customers, and we started fielding a lot of questions about this style guide. A couple of those things were they were asking, how can I get my app to look like this? At the time, we didn't allow for that level of customization. And we found out partners wanted to get their apps to look like Salesforce. And because of the way that style guide was at the time, it was simply for resource purposes only. We also heard, how can I use the CSS in that living style guide inside of my application? We learned that partners were actually reverse engineering the CSS that we had in that living style guide to try to match our styles. And they were actually using the developer tools in inspecting the elements inside the browser. And for those of you that are developers, copying those styles out of there and trying to get the cascade right doesn't really end well. And it's pretty difficult to do. So I suppose back in 2014, the C in CSS actually stood for confusing instead of the cascade. We continue to listen very intently, but there was a couple other things that we had to work through. Also internally, we have over 200 designers and thousands of Scrum teams and thousands of engineers working on the features that we deliver every day. And then while externally, there's hundreds and thousands of admins and developers like all of you here today. But not only that, we had a continually growing number of products and clouds that we were having to support. And if you haven't noticed lately, Salesforce has seemed to have been acquiring a lot of them on a quite regular basis. And so we needed to provide brand alignment and quality throughout our ecosystem to all of our customers. And to do this, we had to solve some pretty challenging questions. We had to ask ourselves, how do we keep colors, spacing, sizing, consistent across our entire platform on all of the applications that are being built. Again, for those developers out there and even designers, maintaining fit and finish can be extremely challenging and time consuming. We also had to ask ourselves, how can we keep designers from solving the same problems by maybe offering the same patterns? If you look here, I'm going to use this little fancy thing over here. You can see that these are all different expressions of how an empty state should be. There's a lot of different looks and styles there, and it wasn't really consistent with the way that we wanted our brand to speak to the customer. So what we have here on the right is ultimately like all of those different looks and feels combined into one. So maintaining consistency throughout the experience can also be challenging because there's so many teams working simultaneously on similar features throughout an entire release. And last, we had to ask ourselves, we needed to continuously build and design for continuity, scale, and maintainability. And I'm sure many of you in this room know this, but doing this is and continuously is hard. These are all challenges that needed to be solved. So our solution was really to stop designing pages like we were back in the Salesforce 1 days. But we wanted to start designing systems. And this kind of leads us to today, where we built the Salesforce Lightning Design System. So we built the Salesforce Lightning Design System and a framework that we actually distribute now to our customers and that we use internally. Salesforce loves their acronyms. You can refer to it as SLDS for short. I would probably be referring to that throughout this presentation. But essentially, like the style guide in the early days, it's a living design system, but it's actually consumable to our ecosystem. And if you use SLDS, we push updates to you, and you can come along for the ride as we continuously push design updates. So today, we wanted to show you how SLDS can make your life simpler. So I'm going to go through a couple of the sections that we offer in the Lightning Design System. So the Lightning Design System is a central repository of all of our design patterns and guidelines. So each design pattern and guideline is research-driven and is great insight to how we at Salesforce have built our user experience. So there's a lot to take away from that. You can take some of those research guidelines and implement them into your application too. We also built component blueprints and accessibility guidelines. So this is that consumable part that we were lacking in the very first style guide. These are written in high quality, production ready, accessible HTML. And we've also written a CSS framework surrounding that. So all of those components look beautiful and look just like the Lightning experience. And we also have some additional things. We have things like icons. What happened here? Of course that happened. I'm just going to back out real fast.
Okay.
Good. Of course. All right, we also have icons, design tokens, which I'll get into more a little bit later. Additional resources such as fonts, getting started guides for your particular platform. So we'll talk about how if you want to use the SLDS framework on Visualforce, if you want to use it in your iOS application, we'll cover all that stuff. And lastly, we provide robust documentation. So the documentation that you'll find throughout the site has been handwritten internally by the framework team in combination with the doc writing team. And it explains to the consumer how to properly use and implement all the patterns and components that you'll find on the website. So hopefully it should be an easy to use guide to get started really fast. Along with that, every single release for the SLDS framework, we provide release notes for every major and minor version of the design system. So you can see all the stuff that's kind of happening and changing behind the scenes. We're very transparent in that respect. So all of those aspects are built upon 4 core principles that we've established here in the user experience department. They are applied universally across our organization, and they are intentionally ordered in priority order, and I'll go through them right now. So our first principle is clarity. We really want to provide a clear path of success to the user. We want to eliminate any ambiguity. We want to enable people to see, understand, and act with confidence. The next principle is efficiency. And so we want to make sure that our user experience is streamlining and optimizing your workflow, intelligently anticipating the needs to help people work better, smarter, and faster. And then third is consistency. So we want to create familiarity and strengthen intuition by applying the same solutions to the same problem, right? And then last, we have beauty. Who doesn't love a little beauty inside their app? Here, Jade?
Cool. So let's take a slightly deeper dive into some of the things that Brandon summarized so far. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the design guidelines section of our site and discuss how these guidelines help designers know which patterns they should be using to solve particular user experience problems. The patterns that we lay out in this section aim to provide a unified language for the designers and help to guide them to create decisions and create designs that share a consistent look and feel in all the projects that they create. This helps maintain the Lightning Design System's principle of consistency. So in our design guidelines section of the Lightning Design System site, we focus on helping designers find comprehensive information on how to solve repeatable patterns through the use of our published guidelines. We have guidelines for a whole bunch of different categories that a web experience needs to solve, things such as color, navigation, typography, voice and tone, localization, and a whole bunch more. It's a very comprehensive section. From a user experience perspective, these design patterns help us maintain consistency throughout the product. Also helps the end users of the product as they see the same flow and the same experience in multiple places, so they can kind of start to build that intuition and kind of know without thinking how they interact with a pattern when they encounter it. The information in this section is largely provided by our platform user experience team. With each release of the Lightning Design System, we publish more guidelines that are added to help with new cases and new needs. The information in this section, below the design guidelines section, we have our accessibility section. Accessibility guidelines are really important for us at Salesforce, and they're an essential guide to the patterns and considerations that designers and developers should follow in order to create fully accessible user experiences for their customers. This section defines some clear patterns and rules for ensuring that you're following accessibility best practices when it comes to a particular behavior or a set of interactions. Although you'll see specific accessibility information and guidance when we get into the actual component blueprints themselves, this section serves as kind of a higher level guide to help you create inclusive components and flows, make sure everyone can use your product. So the last thing we're going to touch on in this section is our icons page. And the Lightning Design System, we provide a very comprehensive set of SVG-based icons, with each set being geared toward a particular use case. So we have many different types of icons. Some of the categories are, we have our action icons, which we use to represent actions that a user can take on a given screen. We have custom icons, which we use for custom objects. We have the document type icons, which we use specifically for representing types of files, like when they're uploading and when a preview of that image or the file that they're uploading isn't available for preview. And last but not least, we have our utility icons, which are kind of a set of more general purpose icons that can be used in many different places throughout the user experience. With such a robust set of these icons, designers can feel empowered to create a really robust and comprehensive set of user interfaces. So another thing that we provide as a Lightning Design System is we provide a couple design tools that help everyone be really productive and be really efficient in the things that they're building. So for designers, we released a Sketch UI kit, which is available for download in our download section of our website. And this UI kit provides comprehensive collection of the UI components, color tokens, typography, icons, all the things that make up our design system. It also comes with informational instructions geared towards helping designers build user interface designs that are in alignment with our design principles. With this robust collection of components, instructions, and symbols, designers are equipped with everything they need to create designs, both for the desktop and mobile experience, that adhere to our Salesforce look and feel. Some of our guidelines in the sketch file also includes things for a specific feature, like the builder feature that we have. We also include a set of layout wireframes that help designers maintain consistent layouts for the different compositions that they make. For developers, we also have a playground for you. We release an SLDS Starter Kit, which you can find on Salesforce UX's GitHub page. It's geared toward a range of developers and designers too. Everyone from prototypers to the large application developer, everyone can kind of use this to get started with some prototypes. It aims to be kind of a starting point to enable rapid prototype development for our user interfaces that are built off SLDS. The project is pretty well documented. It has informative README files in each section of that project that'll help guide you to create, kind of know where you put your files and what's expected to kind of create these rapid prototype projects. It's really effortless to download and start working with it. You just clone the project, you npm install to get the dependencies, and you just start up the built-in web server. Once you kind of open up your localhost instance, you can read through the getting started documentation, explore the linked tutorial projects, and then start creating your own custom prototype project. A great feature of this project is how easy it is to deploy them to Heroku. Even if you're working on something that's kind of secret and you need to not have like an open release, it's with just a couple clicks you can add additional access security, like a username and password, and then you can launch that up to Heroku with just a couple steps and have it available to the audience that you would like to see your project. So it's never been easier to rapidly build prototypes with the Salesforce Lightning design system.
Awesome, thanks, Jade. Next I want to get into tokens. I mentioned them earlier. And I also want to touch on our helpful utility classes that the Lightning Design System offers. But first, I wanted to get into design tokens, kind of just inform you about what they are and how to use them inside of your application. So design tokens, in a nutshell, are the smallest atoms of a design system. They simply are constants or values of design properties. And this allows us to maintain consistency across our entire platform. And it spans both between web applications as well as native applications. So like I mentioned, each token is a reference to a single design property. And all of our design tokens are stored within a repository. And when they're updated and we push that publish button, those design updates will propagate throughout the entire ecosystem of Salesforce. And this is really cool and super powerful. So if the team wanted to say, I don't know, change Salesforce blue to red tomorrow, like if we made that change, everything would be red. We're not going to do that, by the way. But it's great because if you use design tokens within your application, we prevent you from ever having to touch your source code to receive that design update. So here's a look at some of the properties that we store and provide to be consumed. There's things such as like colors. So like I mentioned, background colors, we have border colors, text colors. We have sizing, so font sizes, spacing. I'll get into this a little bit later, but I don't know if anyone has seen our recently released Comfy Compact mode within the Lightning experience, but this is how that feature was enabled, okay? And those tokens that are feature enabled are GA'd this release, so you can start consuming them in your product today. And then there's such things as like depth. You can add some box shadows and manipulate z-indexes and such. All a lot of powerful stuff right there. So all of our design tokens are generated from one of our open source tools called Theo. So if you're interested, if you're a developer and you want to play around with it, you can go check it out at github.com, Salesforce UX /Theo. So what Theo does, it allows us to maintain a single source of truth. And then it gives us a bunch of output files that all of the platforms that we support understand. Okay. So these outputs range from everything from Lightning, of course. If you're using the Lightning experience or even Aura, we will output SAS tokens. So that's a pre-processing kind of variable syntax. We distribute iOS stuff, so a pure JSON file, and then also things like Android. And we even do color swatches. So we'll generate a list of color swatches for Photoshop and Sketch for your designers if you're defining all of like your colors as like background colors, for example. So let's take a look at how Theo actually generates this stuff for us. So as you can see over here on the left, this is a single JSON file or a YAML file, and this is our source of truth. This is the thing that's stored in that repository. And here this file describes the design properties that I was talking about as an object. So here we would have the required name and value of that token. And then we added some additional metadata, such as its category and comments, and that metadata can be used in any ways that you see fit. We use it for display purposes on our website. So then Theo parses this JSON file, and it gives us multiple files that are generated that are platform specific, right? And so it actually will transform all the values for you. So like I mentioned, we'll get like the SAS variable up here, so now I can start using this in my preprocessor if I like. Here's the Aura token that it would generate. So here's that name that maps to the name over here, and the value maps to the value, as you see. And what's interesting also is down here, this is Android specific. If you notice the value, we're actually gonna do all the transformation for you. So Android actually only understands 8-digit hex colors with alpha levels. So we'll actually transform those things for you on the fly. So once all these files get generated from Theo, we now have a reference point that we can use inside of the platform of our liking. But on the Lightning platform, this is what a token would look like if you wanted to use it inside of your CSS resource. So you write the CSS property name, and then in the place of the value, you would use the token. The format is a T, as you can see here. You can also use token, but T is for short. And then followed by the token name in the parentheses. And by using this in your CSS resource, you're now using our token suite, and you'll receive all of those design updates and keep you aligned with the Salesforce product automatically. So because you've referenced this in your CSS resource, the token will essentially get transformed at runtime on the platform, and then it will get generated into this right here. So it's just generating, outputting back into normal CSS or whatever your platform understands. So what does this all mean? It really means no more hard-coded values inside of your source code. Your app or your component will continuously remain in sync with all of the design updates that Salesforce is providing. You can also get this by using the component blueprints that Jade is going to talk a little bit more about here in a little bit. To get a better idea of the design tokens and what they have to offer, I'd recommend everyone just go and check it out. lightningdesignsystem.com design tokens. This is a robust list of all the tokens that we provide to you as the customer. It will show the token name, some of the additional metadata I was talking about, some live examples of what the output looks like. You can switch formats up here and such. But yeah, definitely go check that out. Next, I want to get into those helpful utility classes that I was talking about. So utility classes are essentially single-purpose classes. They don't do a whole lot on a surface level, but they'll give you additional changes or properties that you want to make to certain aspects of your app or component. So now we wouldn't recommend you build a full component with just utility classes. We encourage you to actually use the component blueprints to build components, but these are super helpful if you want to extend upon that additional blueprint and kind of modify your component or your page layout with things like grids. We have list helpers. We also have things like the padding and margin spacing utilities. So instead of referencing that spacing token that I was talking about earlier, we actually have a utility class that you can just apply to your HTML element, and it will give the same output. And then there's other things like text classes, so you can have the same typography hierarchy that we have within our application today just by slapping one of those utility classes on. So Jay's going to get a little bit into the component blueprint section.
Yeah, so component blueprints, content-wise, this is the most comprehensive part of our design system. We currently have 83 component blueprints with 157 variants on those blueprints. As the name suggests, component blueprints are the framework-agnostic, accessible HTML and CSS code that provide the base structure for our component-based interfaces. So real quick, before we get too deep into it, let's briefly discuss what components are. Components and component-based design is all based on the principle that a user interface element should be considered to be an isolated and composable chunk of code. It should be responsible for rendering and appearance of itself, and it should not influence the external layout or components outside of its boundaries. In the Salesforce Lightning design system, we have two types of components, the first of which we call base components. And base components are kind of the smallest possible chunks of reusable UI code. They represent atomic user interface elements, with a few examples of which being buttons, icons, input elements, kind of like really small things like that. Base components can be used by themselves, but they are also frequently utilized by our other type of components, which we call experience components. And our experience components are more complex and they're comprehensive. They often comprise of one or multiple base components arranged in layout in conjunction with other user interface elements in order to create those kind of more robust user experience interfaces. In our Lightning design system, some good examples of experience components are things like our app launcher, color picker, rich text editor, welcome mat. These components tend to represent functional, declarative, or programmatic needs. An important thing to note here is kind of understanding what our component blueprints are not. They are not living, fully functional, interactive components on their own. When you go to the component blueprints section on the Lightning Design System site, you'll notice that they're not interactive. Rather, our documentation showcases them in all the different multiple states and examples and kind of it represents the gritty details of all the states that a component would need to represent. Although this can be confusing to new users, there's actually a really specific intent behind this. And the intent is to keep the Salesforce Lightning design system platform agnostic. This means that the HTML and CSS that we publish can be implemented by any number of systems. And indeed, there are multiple implementations of our Lightning design system already out there. So Salesforce has a first-party implementation of the Lightning design system with the Lightning platform, with their Lightning experience components. There's also an open source implementation project written in React called Design System React. This project is stored and hosted on the GitHub platform. It could also be downloaded through NPM. And there's also there's a Design System Angular project, which is an implementation of our design system that's written in Angular. So part of the beauty in what we do as a Salesforce design system is we give people the flexibility to write your own implementation code in any language that you prefer, and have confidence that that underlying HTML that we are publishing and that you are consuming follow all the standards, conventions, and best practices of our Salesforce Lightning design system. Since we are Salesforce, we do have a particular affection for the Lightning Components framework and how it enables developers on our platform to utilize our design system. If you're developing on the Lightning platform, you can take advantage of the Lightning Components framework to really rapidly create these robust user interfaces without a ton of custom code. To enable Lightning Components in a Lightning app, you add the OR application tag above, kind of up there, and that have extend force SLDS. You can also enable Lightning Components in a Lightning Out project. The Lightning Components are built from the Lightning design system's component blueprints, And if you're building from the Lightning experience, we serve that Lightning Design System CSS framework for free. So if there are any components that you kind of need to make custom, you know that all of the classes and all of the CSS from SLDS is available for your consumption. So another way we can use the Salesforce Lightning Design System is within Visualforce itself. We have an Apex SLDS tag that you can include that will include the Lightning Design System, and any code wrapped within an element with the SLDS scope class is going to be, you're going to have the design system available to it, and all those CSS classes are going to be available in that scope. If you would like to turn on the Lightning experience for Visualforce, this has been a really popular feature that we released. We have this like magical attribute called Lightning style sheets equals true, and you just add that to the Apex page tag, and a lot of look and feel of Lightning comes to your Apex application, which is really cool. When components adopt the Lightning design system, we can effortlessly make these sweeping changes in the platform. So a good example of this is the theming effort we released last year. When we build our components that utilize our dynamic theming tokens, our user interfaces respond to those when those values are updated on the platform. So this means that user interfaces can quickly go from looking like this to this with zero coding changes, which is really awesome, and this speaks to the power of design tokens and how they eliminate hard-coded colors from the source code. Another example of just how powerful our design token-driven system is can be seen with the densification project, which Brandon talked about, which we just released recently. We introduced the concept of dynamic sizing tokens, and when users in the platform set their user interface to that compact mode, all those token values update, and our user interface responds with zero code changes. So this is really awesome, really powerful stuff, really shows the power of our design system. So that's pretty much it for the content. I'm going to give you a couple resources here where you can kind of go if you want to take some next steps or learn some more stuff. The first of which, we want to shout out our Lightning Components Developer Guide. This is at developer.salesforce.com. And this is a comprehensive documentation of the Lightning components, how to use them, what's adopted, like what you can use. It also has information on design tokens and how you can utilize them in your Lightning apps. We also have our website, which is the Lightning Design System website at lightningdesignsystem.com. This has all the goodness we talked about today, has more information on the component blueprints, utilities, design guidelines, all the things we talked about. It also has ways to get in touch with us as a team. And another great way to get in touch with us is through our open source repository. So the design system is an open source project. We're hosted on GitHub. And if you have any questions or notice any issues, a great way to communicate with us is to use the Issues tab on GitHub, if you're familiar with that process. We respond really well to the things that come in through there. Another thing you can do is you can head on over to Trailhead. We have an SLDS Trailhead module on Trailhead if you search for design system. We'll walk you through different units to make you more knowledgeable about like the inner workings of the design system, how you can use it, and of course at the end of it, you earn a sweet badge. So, and then also while you're here at Dreamforce, be sure you head over to the developer keynote. That's tomorrow at 1:00 p.m. And then one last thing you can do is you can go and check out our presentations page on the agenda builder. We'll have a chatter feed open soon. We'll share the deck, and you can post any questions if you feel like we didn't address them today.
Yeah, and then we'll also have all of our Trailhead modules up there too, so you can access them as well. Cool. So that's going to do it for us. We want to allow some time for some Q&A. If you have any questions for us, I know we covered a lot. Probably not as much as maybe someone would like. So if you have any additional questions, you can either go to the mic or you can just yell. Just yell at me. And then I'll respond back out what that question was. If not, everyone enjoys the rest of your Dreamforce.